My name is Ryan Lewis. I'm 39 years old, living in Austin, Texas, and for the past 11 years I've been married to Amber. If you asked anyone who knew us, they'd tell you we were the solid couple, the dependable ones. No scandals, no drama, just two people building a quiet, ordinary life together. I work as a product manager at a tech company that most people haven't heard of but still somehow manages to keep me busy around the clock. Amber's in marketing, freelancing mostly, which gave her more flexibility than me. We had a nice house in South Austin, 2 cars, a golden retriever named Milo. The American dream, right? But dreams have a funny way of fading into routines. And routines? They can turn into blinders. Looking back now, I can't tell you the exact moment things started to change. Maybe it was when Amber stopped kissing me goodbye in the mornings. Or when our date nights turned into Netflix reruns and takeout with both of us scrolling through our phones more than actually talking. I always thought these things were normal. Marriages settle. The spark dims, but the foundation stays. That's what I believed. Until Houston. It was a Wednesday when Amber first brought up the charity event. It's for work, she said casually over dinner, stabbing at her salad. Some networking thing, but they're doing an auction and a silent raffle. You know, the usual. I remember raising an eyebrow. In Houston? Last minute? That's not really her scene. I know, but it's important, she insisted, brushing a stray lock of hair behind her ear. It'll be good for me to show up. Besides, we could use a night out. There was something in her tone, too light, too rehearsed. Amber never cared much for corporate mingling. That was my world, not hers. But I didn't push. Honestly, part of me was relieved she wanted to go anywhere with me. So we went. The venue was a swanky downtown hotel. One of those places with marble floors so polished you feel guilty walking on them. The crowd was exactly what I expected: suits, cocktail dresses, people trying too hard to seem important. Amber fit right in. She always did. She could glide into any room and find a way to shine without even trying. That night, she wore a dark green dress that hugged her in all the right places, her hair in soft waves down her shoulders. She looked beautiful. And distant. I spent the first half hour making small talk with people whose names I barely remembered. Amber flitted around the room, glass of white wine in hand, working her charm. But there was a tension in her tonight. A certain edge in her smile, like she was searching for something or someone. And then I saw him. Tall, well-dressed, early 40s maybe. Dark hair, sharp jawline, a self-assuredness in his posture that immediately caught my attention. He was standing near the bar, talking to Amber. No, not talking. Laughing. They were laughing in that way old friends do, with an ease that comes from shared history. When Amber noticed me watching, she smiled too brightly and waved me over. Ryan, this is Chris Hamilton, she said, looping her arm through mine. We went to college together. Same program, actually. Haven't seen him in years. Chris offered his hand and I took it. Firm grip, perfect smile. I could already tell he was one of those guys who never had to try too hard. The type who could charm a room without breaking a sweat. Pleasure to meet you, Ryan. Amber's told me so much about you, he said. Funny. I hadn't heard her mention his name. Not once in 11 years. Amber's fingers lingered on his forearm a little too long. It wasn't overt, but it was there. A subtle touch, the kind you'd miss if you weren't looking. But I was looking. And I couldn't unsee it. Chris is in town for a few weeks, Amber continued, her voice a shade too upbeat. Consulting for a firm downtown. Total coincidence running into him tonight. A coincidence, right? I forced a polite smile, but inside, my mind was racing. I've never been the jealous type. Amber had male friends. I had female colleagues. It was never an issue. But this felt different. Maybe it was the way her body angled towards him or the soft laughter she reserved for private jokes. The kind I hadn't heard directed at me in a long time. Chris excused himself a few minutes later, claiming he needed to catch up with someone. As he walked away, Amber's gaze followed him for a moment too long. When she turned back to me, her smile faltered. You're quiet, she said, tilting her head. Just taking it all in, I replied. Which wasn't a lie. I was taking it all in, the way her eyes had lit up talking to him, the sudden guardedness in her tone. You're not going to get weird about this, are you? She asked, half joking, half probing. No, I said, shrugging it off. Why would I? But the truth was already settling like a stone in my gut. For the rest of the evening, I watched them from a distance. They didn't spend the entire night glued together, but whenever their paths crossed, it was like watching magnets pull toward each other. The touches, the shared glances, the easy way they slipped into their own little bubble. It was subtle, but it was there. Amber was careful after that. She made sure to include me in conversations, smiled when she caught my eye, even leaned into me a little when we posed for a photo. but none of it felt real. It was like she was performing the role of wife while her mind was elsewhere. I drove us home that night in silence. Amber hummed along to the radio, tapping her fingers on her thigh, acting like everything was perfectly normal. But I couldn't shake the image of her with Chris. It was burned into my brain. When we got home, she kissed me goodnight, a peck on the cheek, quick and routine. Then she disappeared into the bathroom, the door clicking shut with a finality that echoed louder than it should have. Lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, I kept replaying the night in my head. Every glance, every touch, every laugh. I told myself I was overthinking it, that I was being insecure. But deep down, I knew better. Something had shifted. And once you see that shift, you can't unsee it. It's funny in a sad way. You go through life thinking you know someone. You build a life together, share dreams, plans, mundane routines. You believe in the narrative you've created. But it only takes one crack to shatter that illusion. That night in Houston was my first crack. I didn't know it yet, but the foundation of my marriage was already crumbling beneath my feet. And I had no idea just how far down the rabbit hole I was about to go. The thing about suspicion is that once it takes root, it grows like a weed. Fast, invasive, suffocating everything else. After that night in Houston, I kept trying to convince myself it was nothing. A harmless reunion. A coincidence. But the more I tried to let it go, the louder the doubt became. It wasn't just Chris. Not really. He was just the face of something I'd been too blind to see. In the weeks that followed, I started noticing things that had probably been happening for months, maybe longer, but I'd ignored them. Brushed them off as quirks. Bad habits. Life stress. Amber's work trips, for example. They'd always been part of her job, but lately they'd ramped up. Every other weekend, it seemed, she had a client meeting or a networking event out of town. Dallas, San Antonio, sometimes even back to Houston. I never questioned it. Why would I? She had always been ambitious, and I respected that. But now every trip felt suspicious. Every vague itinerary, every brushed-off detail, it all started to pile up. I remembered how she used to leave her phone lying around the house. Kitchen counter, nightstand, sofa cushion, it was never out of reach, but it wasn't guarded. That had changed. Now it was always with her. If she left the room, the phone went with her. When she put it down, it was face down, always on silent. Subtle, but different. One afternoon, I came home early from work, a rare half-day thanks to a power outage at the office. I didn't tell Amber I was coming. Thought it'd be nice to surprise her. Maybe grab lunch together, break up the routine. When I walked through the front door, the house was eerily quiet. Milo trotted over to greet me, tail wagging, but there was no sign of Amber. Her car was in the driveway. Her purse was on the entryway table. But she wasn't home. I called her cell. No answer. I waited, pacing the living room, growing more uneasy with each passing minute. 20 minutes later, the garage door rumbled open. Amber walked in, gym bag slung over her shoulder, flushed cheeks, hair slightly damp. "Oh, hey," she said, surprised but trying to play it cool. "Didn't expect you home this early?" "Power outage," I explained. "Thought we could grab lunch." Her smile was polite but not warm. "Oh, I just came back from the gym. I'm gross. Let me shower first." It wasn't anything she said. It was how she said it. Distant. Distracted. As she headed upstairs, I noticed her gym bag looked off. Bulkier than usual. When she wasn't looking, I checked it. No workout clothes. Just her usual purse items, a change of shoes, and oddly, a small gift bag from a boutique I didn't recognize. No gym towel. No water bottle. Nothing that suggested she'd been working out. I put everything back the way I found it, my chest tight with a feeling I didn't want to name. The next few days were a blur of overthinking. I found myself replaying conversations, dissecting her tone, her expressions, her body language. Every small inconsistency felt like another crack in the facade. She'd started dressing differently, too. Subtler at first, new lingerie tags I found when taking out the trash, clothes I didn't remember her buying. She was more meticulous with her appearance, even for quick errands. Amber had always been stylish, but this was different. It felt performative. I even started noticing things around the house. Jewelry missing from her dresser for days at a time. A scarf that smelled faintly of cologne that wasn't mine. Receipts tucked into her coat pockets from places she'd never mentioned visiting. Individually, these were small things. But together, they painted a picture I didn't want to admit was forming. Still, I didn't confront her. Not yet. I wasn't ready to hear the answers. I needed proof. Concrete, undeniable proof. Not just gut feelings and circumstantial evidence. So I started paying closer attention. One evening, while Amber was in the shower, her phone buzzed on the nightstand. For once, she had left it unattended. My heart pounded as I stared at the screen. The message preview was innocuous, a calendar reminder for a client dinner in Houston the following Friday. But something told me it wasn't just a work thing. When she came back into the room, towel wrapped around her, I casually asked, "Another trip this week?" "Yeah, same client. It's been a long process, but we're almost there." Her answer was smooth, but her eyes didn't meet mine. That was when I knew. Not suspected, knew. I didn't sleep much that night. By now, everything Amber did was viewed through the lens of doubt. Every smile felt forced. Every kiss was mechanical. Even the way she laughed at my jokes seemed rehearsed, like she was trying to maintain an illusion that no longer held weight. It's a strange kind of loneliness, sitting next to someone you love and realizing they're already somewhere else. I thought back to how we used to be. The early days of our marriage, late-night talks, spontaneous road trips, shared playlists, and inside jokes. Somewhere along the way, we'd stopped being partners and started being roommates with a shared history. But this was betrayal. I started noticing patterns. Amber would disappear into the bathroom for long stretches with her phone. She'd get defensive if I casually asked who she was texting. If I mentioned the charity event or Chris, she'd change the subject. One evening, when she thought I was asleep, I heard her slip out of bed and pad downstairs. I waited a minute before following, careful not to make a sound. From the top of the stairs, I could see her silhouette in the kitchen, phone pressed to her ear, whispering in hushed tones. I couldn't make out the words, but the secrecy was deafening. When she returned, she climbed into bed as if nothing had happened. I didn't say a word. Neither did she. That was when I realized Amber wasn't just hiding something. She was hiding someone. The weight of that truth settled on me like a lead blanket. I kept thinking, this can't be happening. But it was. Right in front of me. Still, a part of me hoped I was wrong. That I was misreading the signs. That there was a logical explanation. But deep down, I knew better. The final straw came in the form of a receipt. One lazy Sunday afternoon, while Amber was napping upstairs, I was tidying up the living room. Under a stack of magazines, I found a crumpled piece of paper. A receipt from a boutique hotel in Houston. One night stay. The date? Same night as her last client dinner. I sat on the couch, staring at that slip of paper, my hands trembling. It was the last piece of the puzzle. The proof I'd been dreading. Amber was cheating on me. With Chris? Most likely. But at that point, the who didn't matter as much as the what. I felt a strange mix of emotions, anger, betrayal, sadness, but also a cold, clinical clarity. The truth was out. And now I had to decide what to do with it. But one thing was certain, nothing would ever be the same. That crack from the charity event had become a fault line. And soon, the whole foundation would give way. By the time the next work trip rolled around, I wasn't playing dumb anymore. Amber told me she'd be in Houston again, same client, same vague explanation. But I didn't press her. I didn't accuse. I didn't even let my tone change. Safe travels, I said, giving her a peck on the cheek as she packed her overnight bag. Same small suitcase. Same rushed goodbye. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. It never did anymore. That Friday, she left in the morning as usual. Only this time, I had my own plans. Coincidentally, or so I told her, I had a business meeting scheduled in Houston that same day. The truth was, I had rearranged my entire week to make it happen. I told my boss I needed to be there in person for a vendor negotiation. No one asked questions. In this line of work, no one ever does. The drive to Houston felt longer than usual. Every mile was a countdown, every exit sign a reminder of what I was about to do. My stomach was a knot of dread and certainty. I wasn't hoping to catch Amber in a lie. I already knew she was lying. What I wanted was confirmation. The kind you can't spin into excuses. She had mentioned a restaurant. Some high-end fusion place, she said, was perfect for client dinners. I remembered the name because she dropped it casually, maybe too casually, like she wanted me to hear it. So that's where I went. I parked a block away, far enough to stay unseen, and walked the rest of the distance. The place was exactly what I pictured, dim lighting, exposed brick walls, the kind of atmosphere designed for quiet conversations and discreet rendezvous. First, I thought maybe I was wrong. The dining area wasn't crowded, and scanning the tables, I didn't see her. For a brief moment, I felt foolish, paranoid. Maybe this was all in my head. Maybe I had let one bad interaction spiral into a web of misplaced suspicion. But then, at the back of the restaurant, tucked into a corner booth, I saw her, Amber, and Chris. They weren't talking business. There was no laptop, no portfolios, no client binders spread out across the table. Just 2 glasses of wine, a shared plate of appetizers, and them, leaning in close, laughing softly. Chris's hand was resting on hers. Not for emphasis. Not in a friendly, platonic way. It was casual, familiar, like it had been there 100 times before. Amber's expression wasn't the one she wore at home. With me, her smiles had grown tight, mechanical. Here, with him, her face was lit up in a way I hadn't seen in months. Maybe longer. I stood frozen near the entrance, watching my wife be someone else with someone else. A server passed by, giving me a polite smile, and I forced myself to move. I turned on my heel and walked out before they noticed me. Outside, the night air felt thick and suffocating. I sat in my car for what felt like hours, hands gripping the steering wheel, trying to process the reality of what I'd seen. I wasn't angry. Not yet. What I felt was worse, hollow. Like something inside me had quietly broken. I kept replaying it in my head. The hand on hers, the shared laughter, the int asterisk Macy of it all. This wasn't a fling. This wasn't a one-off mistake. This was something that had been nurtured, grown in the cracks of our marriage while I wasn't looking. For months, Amber had been living a double life, and I had been too busy, too trusting, too naive to see it. I didn't confront her that night. I drove back to Austin in silence, the radio off, the road stretching endlessly ahead of me. Every now and then, my phone would buzz with a text from her. Dinner was great. Long day but productive. Heading back to the hotel. Love you. Love you. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. How do you claim to love someone while sitting across from another man, holding his hand like it's the most natural thing in the world? I didn't reply. When I got home, the house felt colder, quieter. Milo greeted me at the door, his tail wagging, oblivious to the emotional wreckage I'd brought back with me. I sat on the couch, staring at nothing, replaying every moment of that evening in my mind. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them together. Every smile, every lingering touch, every unspoken betrayal. The silence of the house was deafening, filled with the ghosts of a marriage I thought was solid. The next morning, Amber returned home, all smiles and casual conversation. Trip went well, she said, dropping her bag by the door. You wouldn't believe how much progress we made. Long day, but worth it. I watched her carefully, the ease in her voice, the practiced rhythm of her words. She was lying to my face, effortlessly. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I wanted to see how far she'd go, how long she could keep up the charade. Over the next few days, life resumed its hollow rhythm. Amber was attentive in all the right ways. Asking about my day, cooking dinner, even suggesting a movie night. But it all felt scripted, like she was ticking boxes in a role she no longer believed in. And I let her. But inside I was keeping score. The thing is, infidelity isn't just about physical betrayal. It's about the erosion of honesty. The slow, insidious way someone you love starts compartmentalizing their life, building walls you're not allowed to see behind. Amber had built those walls expertly. But now the cracks were visible. And once you see them, you can't pretend they're not there. One evening, as we sat on the couch watching a show neither of us cared about, Amber's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, her face briefly illuminated by the screen, before flipping it face down. It was instinctual, automatic. I didn't ask who it was. I didn't need to. That night, lying in bed beside her, I felt like a stranger in my own home. She was inches away, but it might as well have been miles. I kept thinking back to that night in Houston, to the way she looked at Chris, not like a colleague, not like a friend, like someone who had been waiting for an escape and had finally found it. The worst part? I couldn't even bring myself to hate her. What I felt was something colder. Resignation. The slow, sinking realization that the person you loved had already left you long before you noticed they were gone. Eventually, there comes a moment where denial is no longer an option, where the truth, as painful as it is, becomes unavoidable. For me, that moment had come and gone. Amber was having an affair. And the woman I thought I knew? She wasn't coming back. The question now wasn't whether she was cheating. It was what I was going to do about it. The day after I saw Amber with Chris, everything changed. Not on the surface. On the surface, life went on. We had breakfast together. She talked about her upcoming projects. I nodded along, playing my part. But underneath? Underneath, I felt like I was sitting across from a stranger. It was surreal. To watch her move around our kitchen, pouring coffee, humming a song, acting as if the ground beneath us hadn't just caved in. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Part of me wanted to. The part that was angry, betrayed, humiliated. But there was another part, a quieter, colder part that wanted to watch. To see how long she'd keep up the lie. I wanted to see if she'd ever come clean on her own. Spoiler, she didn't. That night, lying in bed next to her, the distance between us felt wider than it ever had. She scrolled through her phone, probably texting him, while I stared at the ceiling, pretending to read the news. It's a special kind of loneliness, being in the same room as the person you love and realizing they've already left you emotionally. That they're physically there, but their mind, their heart is somewhere else. With someone else. I started noticing every little thing. The way she'd angle her phone away from me when a message came through. How she'd excuse herself to take calls from a client that somehow never happened within my *T. The subtle shifts in her tone when she talked about her work trips. None of this was new. But now I couldn't unsee it. One evening, a few days after Houston, we were watching TV. Or pretending to. Amber's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, her face flickering with an expression so quick most people wouldn't catch it. But I caught it. "Everything okay?" I asked, keeping my voice light. "Yeah," she said too quickly, locking the screen and setting it face down. "Just work stuff." Work stuff. Of course. In that moment, I realized how good she had gotten at this. At lying. At hiding. She wasn't stumbling through it. She wasn't torn up with guilt. She was calm, composed, efficient. And that hurt more than I expected. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was how easily she could live with it. That night, after she went to bed, I sat alone in the living room, lights off, phone in hand. I thought about calling someone. A friend, maybe. But what would I say? "Hey man, remember Amber?" "Yeah, turns out she's been seeing someone else. For months, probably." I saw it with my own eyes. But I haven't told her I know yet. Cool, right? No. This wasn't a conversation I wanted to have. Not yet. I needed to process it first. To sit with it. To feel the weight of it. I scrolled through old photos on my phone. Pictures of us, vacations, anniversaries, random *TS of a life that now felt like someone else's. We looked happy. Or maybe we were just good at looking like we were happy. Somewhere along the way, we had stopped being partners and started being, what? Roommates? Business associates? I kept asking myself, when did I lose her? Was it me? Did I stop trying? Did she? Or was it always going to end this way? The next morning, Amber acted like nothing had happened. She made us breakfast, kissed me on the cheek, and headed out for meetings. I didn't follow her this time. I didn't need to. I already knew where she was going. Or rather, who she was going to. It was like watching a slow-motion car crash. You know what's coming. You see it happening. But you can't stop it. All you can do is brace for impact. Over the next few days, I went through the motions. Work, home, sleep, repeat. But nothing felt real anymore. Every conversation, every interaction was coated in this invisible layer of falsehood. I caught myself analyzing everything she said. Every word became a clue. Every pause, a red flag. It was exhausting. But what hurt the most was her indifference. The fact that she could lie so smoothly, so effortlessly. That she could sit across from me at dinner, smiling, making plans for the weekend while carrying on this secret life. It wasn't that she had fallen for someone else. That was painful, yes. But what really gutted me was realizing how little respect she had left for me. For us. She didn't even think I was worth the truth. That's when the numbness set in. A cold, detached acceptance. I stopped waiting for her to confess. She wasn't going to. She had made her choice. Now it was time for me to make mine. One evening she mentioned another trip. Houston again. Another client dinner. I didn't flinch. "Sounds important," I said. "I hope it goes well." She smiled, relieved. Maybe she thought I had bought it. Maybe she thought I was just that trusting. Or that stupid. But inside, a switch had flipped. I wasn't going to be passive anymore. That night, after she went to bed, I opened her laptop. She'd grown careless. Probably thought she had me fooled. Her email was still logged in. I wish I could say I was shocked by what I found. But by then, I was past the point of surprise. Dozens of emails. Late-night conversations. Plans to meet. Jokes about their cover stories. Even hotel confirmations. It wasn't vague. It wasn't emotional cheating. It was physical. Concrete. Calculated. The worst part was how casual it all was. Like they were planning lunch meetings, not affairs. Like I was some oblivious background character in their little romance. I sat there, staring at the screen, feeling a strange sense of calm. No more doubts. No more second-guessing. This was the truth. Black and white. Unavoidable. I closed the laptop quietly and went to bed. I didn't sleep, but I didn't toss and turn either. I just lay there next to her, listening to her breathe, feeling the weight of a marriage that had already ended. In the morning, when she kissed me goodbye, I smiled. But I was already gone. The emotional fallout wasn't loud. There were no screaming matches. No slammed doors. Just a quiet, suffocating erosion of everything we had built. Every glance, every touch, every I love you that followed felt hollow, rehearsed. And yet, we kept playing the parts. Because that's what people do, isn't it? They cling to the familiar even when it's already dead. But I knew it couldn't last much longer. Amber had made her choice. Now it was time for me to make mine. There's a strange sort of calm that comes after the storm when the worst has already happened but you haven't said it out loud yet. That's where I was. Suspended. I wasn't wondering if Amber was cheating anymore. I wasn't even wondering why. All that was left was the when I would confront her, when I would finally say the words I'd been carrying in silence. It came sooner than I expected. It was a Sunday morning. Nothing dramatic. She was making coffee in the kitchen, humming to herself. The same casual routine we'd done 1,000 times before. Only now every movement felt rehearsed. Every smile was a performance. I watched her for a moment, leaning against the doorway, wondering if she could feel the weight of what I knew. Wondering if she even cared. I ran into Chris the other day, I said, my voice deliberately neutral. She froze for half a heartbeat. Just a flicker. Most people wouldn't have noticed. But I did. Oh yeah, she said, turning back to her coffee like it was nothing. Small world. Small world. I stepped into the kitchen, closed the distance between us. She didn't flinch, but her fingers tightened slightly around the mug. You've been seeing him for a while now, haven't you? The words weren't loud. They didn't need to be. They landed heavy like dropping a stone into still water. For a moment, she didn't say anything. Just stood there, back turned, staring into her coffee as if the answer was hiding in the swirl of cream and sugar. Ryan, she said slowly, I don't know what you think you know. I know enough, I cut in. I know about the dinners that weren't dinners. The hotel stays. The emails. The hand-holding in restaurants where you thought no one would see you. She finally turned to face me. Her expression was composed, but her eyes gave her away. There was fear there. And something else, exhaustion. How long? I asked. Simple. Direct. She didn't answer right away. Just exhaled, long and slow, like she was deflating. A few months, she said quietly. It wasn't supposed to be anything serious. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because of how absurd it sounded. Not supposed to be serious. Like cheating on your husband was a casual hobby that got out of hand. Not serious? I echoed. You were practically on a date when I saw you. You weren't discussing business, Amber. She looked down, her fingers tracing the rim of her mug. I know how this looks, she said. No, you don't, I snapped. Because if you did, you wouldn't have lied to my face every day. You wouldn't have let me sit across from you asking about your day while you carried on with him behind my back. Her silence was answer enough. I leaned against the counter, suddenly exhausted. Why, Amber? That's all I want to know. Why him? Why this? She finally looked up, and for the first time I saw something crack in her expression. I don't know, she said, and for once it sounded honest. It started small. Catching up. Harmless. I was lonely, Ryan. I didn't even realize how much until he showed up again. I felt my jaw clench. Lonely? We live in the same house. We sleep in the same bed. But we don't see each other anymore, she said, her voice rising slightly. You're always working. Distracted. Checked out. I felt invisible, Ryan. Like a roommate. Like a ghost. I wanted to argue. To tell her how hard I'd been working for us. How everything I did was to give us a good life. But the words felt hollow even as they formed in my head. Because deep down I knew there was truth in what she said. Not justification, but truth. I get it, I said after a moment. I get that things weren't perfect. But instead of talking to me, instead of trying to fix it, you found someone else. You lied. You cheated. You made the choice for both of us. Her eyes filled with tears, but I felt nothing. No sympathy. No anger. Just a dull, numbing sadness. I didn't plan for it to happen, she whispered. No one ever does, I said. The kitchen felt suffocating. Too small to hold the weight of everything between us. I need some air, I muttered, pushing away from the counter. But before I could leave, she reached out, grabbing my wrist. Not hard. Just enough to make me stop. Ryan, please. Don't walk away like this. I looked down at her hand, then back at her. You already did, Amber. Months ago. She let go. I left the house. Walked aimlessly around the neighborhood, not really seeing anything. My thoughts were loud, disjointed. Anger, hurt, resignation, they all blurred together. When I finally came back, the house was quiet. She was in the living room, sitting on the couch, staring at nothing. I'm going to stay at Tom's for a few days, I said, grabbing a duffel bag from the closet. She didn't argue. Didn't plead. Just nodded, her shoulders sagging. I'm sorry, Ryan, she said. I really am. I know, I replied. But sorry doesn't fix this. I left without looking back. At Tom's place, it hit me harder. Being away from the house, from her, gave me space to breathe, but it also made the finality of it all sink in. This wasn't a fight we could patch up with apologies and promises. This was a fracture that ran too deep. For the next few days, Amber didn't call. Didn't text. Maybe she knew there was nothing left to say. Maybe she was giving me space. Or maybe, just maybe, she was spending that time with him. Strangely, I didn't even want to know. It wasn't about Chris anymore. It wasn't even about Amber. It was about me. About what kind of man I wanted to be moving forward. The confrontation had happened. The truth was out. And now, the only thing left was to decide what came next.